I'm live.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paper Movies. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be discussing Spider-Man. I'm the host for this episode. I'm Adam from Bryant VRM. Joining me, we have Jeremy from Stupid Chainsaw Productions, Matthew from The Geeks Attic, and our guest star, Chris from Mad Machad. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris.
It's no problem.
We're very happy to have you. He's been kind of giving us all the hype about he made a video showing his excitement for doing Spider-Man. So we, after watching that video, we're like, we got to have him on for that episode. So yeah, thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
it's
awesome.
awesome
Good to see you, dude.
But yeah, I'll go ahead and get started with the synopsis. From Spider-Man from 2002, starring Tobey Maguire, Willem Dafoe, James Franco, Kirsten Dunst. It follows 17-year-old Peter Parker. He, during a school field trip, was bitten by a genetically altered spider and gained spider-like abilities, and he learned the hard way that his powers, or using him or not using him, can have consequences, and it resulted in the death of his uncle. So from that, he decides to use his powers to help others and become a superhero.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. I want to jump in here first and say that This is what I consider to be the quintessential superhero origin story. It's this and Iron Man, I think, are the gold standard for what a superhero movie that does the origin story should be like. This one, in my opinion, does it best because the villain's origin is done probably the best out of any of these. That's the problem with a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff, is the villains are just kind of mediocre. But in here, we got Green Goblin, one of the fan favorites of Spider-Man villains. And
yeah, the only time they did the Green Goblin right.
Minus the suit.
Well, yeah, true.
But we don't... The suit is... They describe the suit and don't at the same time. That's one of the things I like about this book. This is, of course, written by Peter David, who, when I think of Peter David, I don't think Spider-Man, I think the Incredible Hulk.
Because he also did Iron Man as well. I guess he does a lot of these superhero.
He was big in Marvel in the 90s, but he did the best run of Incredible Hulk probably ever.
He also did Spider-Man 2099.
Oh, that's true. Fair enough, but that's not Peter Parker.
That's true.
I do appreciate he does a fantastic job with the character and making it. It just feels like a superhero story. It's hard to explain. You pick it up and you read it, and it puts a big grin on your face while you're reading it.
Yeah, it makes you want to get bit by a spider, a mutated spider that can alter your DNA and become a superhero.
Well, I was wanting to ask, I was wanting to get started with our thoughts, but I was going to start with Chris, since he's our guest star. You actually finished this book long before any of us started reading it, so just want to know, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
This is actually my third time reading it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
First time was years ago when I was a kid. That's why I recommended it. It was one of my favorites. Second time was when I bought it at a used bookstore, in January, and read it in a week, and I just love it.
It's awesome.
It's one of my favorite movies, and just
Nice. Yeah, it was really, I liked it. It did some things different, like the opening narration that they did from the film. He still does that, but it's actually more like while he's beating up thugs, that I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I was also, my favorite thing that I was wanting to mention about this book is that, being that it was owned by Sony, and, but this was before the MCU came into place, but I just like that it just kind of went for it in terms of trying to build its own Marvel universe, film universe, because you get references to Daredevil a couple of times.
Yeah.
Ant-Man, yeah. Captain America. The Hulk is referenced twice, so is Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four. And But yeah, I just liked that it was trying to set something up, and I was just like thinking as I was reading, it was like, man, like a Marvel film universe set within this trilogy would have been awesome in my opinion. But yeah, I really did. I thought it was well written. And for the most part, yeah, it's pretty much the story, save for a few different scenes. Like we get like a brief look into Peter Parker's early childhood.
Yes, it's a fantastic scene that's added for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was really good too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a really hard time getting into the book, to be honest with you guys. I thought it was really slow in the beginning. But as time went on and I got more invested in the story, I thought, this is really good. And then it turned into a quick breeze, like, oh, man, I can't put it down. Whenever I had it in my hands, it was like, I got to keep reading.
Awesome.
My only complaint, because I loved this book, I think honestly, it's my favorite thing we've read on the podcast so far. It beat out Raiders. Probably because there's more pages to it and there's more detail. I loved that it didn't start at the beginning of the movie. That we got like a prologue and a first chapter that had nothing really to do with the movie necessarily.
Right, yeah, it starts off in a graveyard, or a cemetery.
He's talking to Uncle Ben after stopping some vandals.
Yeah, and he's Spider-Man.
Yeah, he's Spider-Man at this point. Then it cuts to him as a little boy when he first moves in with Aunt May and Uncle Ben. And it sets up the Spider's the Guardian, which is interesting concept.
Yeah.
And then it goes into the movie. And there's the one thing I don't like about this book is half of the references are nonsensical. And it's literally Peter David, like, wink, wink. This is what's going to happen. Peter gets fired from Dr. Connors. I don't even think Dr. Connors is in the first movie.
No,
they mentioned him.
They mention him, but I don't think he's in there. I don't think they cast him because he's in Spider-Man 2 and 3. But like he's like, well, what if he got bit by a radioactive lizard and turned into a giant lizard? And I'm like, oh, here we go. Or when Matt Murdock's dad is saved, and it's like, oh, we got the Daredevil reference. Or Reed Richards and
Bruce Banner.
Bruce Banner mentioned. I didn't mind the first time they referenced the Incredible Hulk because it genuinely made sense. Because when I saw Spider-Man, there was a trailer for the Hulk, the Ang Lee movie. That one really made sense, and in retrospective, now looking back on the book, the Daredevil one made sense because that came out after. It came out after Hulk, I want to say. But I could do without. The one reference I really found funny is when they reference Interview with a Vampire, the movie, and Kirsten Dunst is like, Mayor MJ is like, yeah, that girl creeped me out because that was Kirsten Dunst. That's like her first role. That personally, I laughed out loud.
Yeah, I told that to my wife, and she laughed out loud too because we watched that movie like a couple of years ago, and I thought that was funny reference too.
Well, see, the thing that actually made me laugh out loud with the book was the alliteration joke. You guys know what I'm talking? I actually laughed out loud. I stopped and I was like, had to tell my wife, I was like, hey, this is pretty funny. And she just kind of looked at me. But, like, alliteration, okay, I have the definition here for those who don't really know. It's the occurrence of the same letter or sound at the beginning of an adjacent or closely connected word. So, in the story, what was it they were talking the Green Goblin. Peter Parker was like, why Green Goblin? And J. Jonah Jameson, he's like, we have to make it the name memorable, and nothing makes people remember a name like alliteration. J. Jonah Jameson said, do you really think so? Peter Parker asked the nearest bystander. I wouldn't know, Robbie Robertson commented. Then JJ's secretary, Betty Brant, informed him that he had a conference call with noted scientist Bruce Banner and then Reed Richards. It was like it just kept going, and I was like, okay, that's pretty funny.
That's classic Stan Lee, because I actually saw an interview after this movie was made that he did that on purpose just so he can remember all their names.
That's funny.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
Now, I was wanting to say the one thing I wasn't really much of a fan of. I didn't like the letters to his parents.
Oh, I loved it.
Some of them were pretty good. Some I found a little like, okay, this is kind of dragging on a little bit too much.
I just kind of thought that it was kind of more like, I mean, I know he's a teenager, but he's not the teenager that'd be like, Dear Diary, I beat up the Green Goblin today.
See, I didn't think of it that way. Matthew will get this because I know he's read this Star Wars book. It reminded me of Kenobi. And in Kenobi, to sidetrack this a little bit, part of the story is that Obi-Wan's trying to talk to Qui-Gon.
Oh, the meditations, yeah.
It reminded me of the meditations, and because I typically hate Dear Diary, but it made sense most of the time. Some of the longer ones were kind of nonsensical. Although I will say, when the rain kiss happened, and it's just one sentence that said disregard the previous entry. I love that.
Well, we mentioned. I like that they reference one thing from the comics, and I wish that they kind of added this somehow in the film, but I don't see how they could. But this was in the comics. It was J. Jonah Jameson, like talking to Spider-Man. Like, he was talking to himself, but to Spider-Man saying just like, Lord, help me, I'm jealous of you. And that was from the comics, and that's why he hates Spider-Man, is because he's jealous of him. So I like that they included that.
Yeah. The mention with Ant-Man, he says something about Henry Pym, which isn't that the original Ant-Man?
Yes.
Yeah, Hank Pym.
Okay.
Chris, you've read it 3 times, so I was just curious, like, was there anything about this novel that you don't like and still don't like after reading it 3 times?
Nostalgia is a really bad thing, so I can't really.
That's fine.
I can't really think of one right on top of my head, to be honest.
Jeremy, you mentioned Ben Kenobi.
Yes.
There's a reference.
Yeah, there was
Spider-Man,
that.
yeah.
There was also a Superman reference. And I get they could do that then. They could never get away with that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a different time when this was written. But I want to bring up one scene, and I didn't like how Peter David connected it. And it's when it has to do with the rain kiss. It's when she's mugged. It's implied that she was set up by Flash.
Yeah.
That's dumb.
Yeah.
That's really dumb. I liked it being random.
I'm looking back at it now, yeah.
Random muggers makes more sense.
Yeah, she had a crazy relationship in high school. She was with Flash only because her dad basically made her stay with the guy, which her dad was a bully. He was a jerk, and so was this Flash.
He was abusive, yeah.
Yeah, and it was sad because when she breaks up with him, he's like, I'm going to get revenge on you. And, later on, she's trying out for an acting gig.
Yeah.
And it turns out that, she doesn't get the part, and the casting lady is pretty harsh with her. And then when Mary Jane leaves, she calls up old Flash and says, hey, it's your aunt. Payback has been paid.
Yeah, it's just unnecessary. I will say though that the Mary Jane father stuff was nicely added. They didn't have a lot of it in the movie, probably because this was also kind of geared towards children, and that's like the last thing you want in your family-friendly movie is to have
child abuse.
Yeah, it's implied though, and I just like that a book can flush it out. A book that's not for kids.
Yeah, I mean, it like what you're saying with like Flash. After Peter Parker, when he gets his powers, he beats him up. Even Mary Jane calls him out on this, saying like Flash's dad was like, I'll give Flash some pointers on how to beat up that. It's like you're gonna tell a kid to beat up another kid, like that's messed up and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the father, we see that he raises his hand to Mary Jane too.
Yeah.
Crazy.
A couple times. Yeah, it's quite it's not pleasant. We also get to see the characterization of Norman Osborn significantly different than it is in the movie. At least how I remember the movie. It's been a few years. He's a lot in the book, a lot more like he is in the comic. Not quite on that level. Where a lot of times Norman Osborn kind of comes off as like a more insane Lex Luthor in the comic. Yeah. Where here he's very cold, and to everyone. In the movie, he's cold to Harry. He treats Harry Osborn like a failure. But he's always like warm to Peter, and that to me, especially you don't see a lot of it. You see some of it in the book, but he's just, I don't know. I'm not sure which I prefer on that. It's interesting.
What I liked picking out in this book was, like, me and my wife watched the film like a few weeks ago, and I liked picking out the different scenes, or the scenes that were not there, like such as the prologue with Peter as a kid, and I liked the wrestling scene where Spider-Man's wrestling the guy and Uncle Ben's watching it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I was kind of wondering if like he was gonna make like this connection, like I wonder if that's Peter or something like that, and.
You bring that up. I couldn't help but laugh too. I wrote this one down in my notes. Whenever they say Bonesaw McGraw, May's like, "Oh, I wonder if that's his given name." And Uncle Ben says, "No, May. His birth name was Bonesaw Leibowitz, but he wants to avoid any possible anti-Semitism." That was pretty funny.
Yeah. What was I going to say?
I like that Aunt May also, when they were talking about Spider-Man, like Ben was just like, apparently he can do whatever a spider can, and May was just like I don't see how his mother can let him out of the house or something.
I like to have a word with his parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked the pace of the book, though. I mean, like I said in the beginning, I was bored, but then it got better and better, and I wanted to keep reading and reading. I think Peter David did an excellent job of adapting the story into a full-blown novel.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring something up because we've all seen all three of these movies. In this book, what's up?
I have not seen the third one.
Oh, okay.
But I hear that that's a blessing.
No, I find the third one a guilty pleasure. I kind of love Spider-Man 3. I saw it more. It's the only one I saw more than once in the theater. I don't know. I may have saw Spider-Man 2 twice in the theater. Or it could have been that I saw it on an airplane. I know I watched it on an airplane and was wanting to show my mom, and my mom's like, I really don't care about this. But Spider-Man 3, we have Eddie Brock is in it. Yeah. Eddie Brock's in this first book.
Yeah, he is.
He's not in the first movie.
They mention him in the movie, though.
They mention him, but he's not seen, and he is seen by Peter in the book, and he's described how he looks in the comic. He's not described as looking like Topher Grace.
Yeah, he's kind of bulky and kind of. He says he kind of dresses like a slob or something.
Yeah,
just like Jameson was like, "Would it kill you to get a decent suit?" Yeah, I did like all of those, the scenes where, when we talked about, Eddie's been on it for weeks, or, I was late for work, but Dr. Connors fired me. I like that they included those scenes.
Yeah.
And, go ahead.
I was just going to say with the J. Jonah Jameson thing, they find Peter Parker's pants in a closet.
Oh, at the end?
That was funny, too. He's like, I don't want Peter Parker's pants. I want his photographs.
I just like how no one catches on to that.
I like that it doesn't end with the shot from the movie, either shot, because, I mean, can we talk about the movie real quick and what the original shot was to end the movie?
Sure.
I swung between the World Trade Center, and this movie came out after September 11th happened. And so they changed it that he swings around the Empire State Building. That's either in the first one or the second one.
Crazy, I have this out already, and we're talking about it. I remember the poster. Wasn't it the poster when he had the helicopter?
Well, that's from the teaser. The teaser also he wrapped a bunch of people. Because I was so excited for that. That is one of the most, I don't know if I can say infamous, but it came out right before September 11th to promote the movie, and it was pulled.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember...
Sorry, go ahead.
I remember seeing it.
The towers are also on the poster.
Yeah, you can see it kind of reflected in his eyes and his
It's
mask.
actually the same. It's like the same one behind you, Adam. It's like the book.
Oh, this one? Yeah.
Yeah, they just
Yeah.
had to edit it because obvious reasons.
Wild times.
So I got two questions. One, what score would you give this book? And two, would you recommend it?
I would give it a B+, and I would recommend it. It's a great superhero film, like Jeremy said. Crap, left my mind. An origin story. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic because we get good little points of him in his youth, and he grows up. He's just some lame kid in school, and then some crazy little event happens, and he's thrown into the mix of, well, what do I do with this power? And he takes the hard road, which is kind of a little bit irritating with, the whole love triangle thing that goes on throughout the book. And at the end, you're like, you're really going to walk away from her? Come on. Don't do that. But he chose to be the hero instead.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Chris?
Nay. And yeah, I definitely recommend it.
Jeremy?
All right, I need to explain this. So I was very behind, not because this is a bad book, but because I work 2 jobs and I'm very tired a lot of the time. I read 75% of this book in one sitting last night. I went from chapter 8 to chapter 20 in one sitting. I highly recommend this book. Highly. I will give it a 5 out of 5, which I've never done before, with the caveat of some of the references casual fans won't quite understand some of the comic book references, but you're still going to get a lot out of this book. And for being a book that's, let's see here, 311 pages... It feels like a book that's more like 150 pages. It's so fast. But it has some great descriptions, some great character thoughts, character interactions. And it adds another layer to a fun popcorn film.
Okay.
I highly recommend.
I highly recommend it too. My thing is, I would give it an A-. For one, I wasn't a big fan of the Dear Mom and Dad thing. Just to me, like you said, there were some parts of it that were good, but I just kind of felt like they did it too much. And two, I felt like we had all these good additional scenes at the beginning, and then and then the last half when we get the actual movie, I felt like it was kind of especially the ending was just a little rushed. It seemed like they were really trying to finish telling the story. That was just from what I noticed anyway. So with that, I would go with an A-, but definitely recommend it.
Okay. Very cool.
I do have a question. The ending with the grand finale when Harry sees Spider-Man leaving his dad's place, is that accurate to the film?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So was this a very accurate book to the movie?
For the most part, yeah.
For the most part.
Norman becomes the Green Goblin sooner in this than he does in the movie. You could argue they happen around the same time for both, but it's just shown differently. It works better where they do it in the book, as opposed to if they did it where that happens in the book in the movie. It wouldn't necessarily make as much sense, and it would have pacing issues.
Okay.
Chris, go ahead.
I was going to ask Chris, you've read it 3 times. Will you rate it a 4th?
Eventually, yeah.
Okay.
I was wanting to say, I did for the whole Mary Jane thing, how it was always Peter that she really loved. And because in the film they kind of imply Harry Osborn sees Flash and Mary Jane break up, and then you kind of get that hint oh, okay, he's going to go for it. But in the I liked how in the book she actually went to the apartment, Peter and Harry's apartment, looking for Peter, and then like Harry just happened to be there, and he just kind of swooned her, yeah. And I like that it was always Peter, but she was just like, Harry Osborn, yeah, he could be cool, Yeah.
All right.
But, well, guys, I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for joining us again today. And Chris from Mad Machad, thank you so much for being our guest star today. And thank you again for all the hype geared toward this novel. And yeah, guys, recommend it. Pick up a copy of Spider-Man. You can find it in like half-price bookstores, or like maybe find it on Amazon or something like that. So yeah, we definitely recommend it. Pick it up, read it. You won't be disappointed. And be sure to go check out Matthew from the Geeks Attic, Jeremy from Stupid Chainsaw Production, Chris from Mad Machad, and you can find me at Bryant VRM. Guys, thank you all so much again for joining us. We hope that you have a great evening and have a great Thanksgiving holiday. And be sure to join us next month in December for Gremlins.
By Chris Columbus.
Chris Columbus, yeah, that's going to be, and Matthew will be the host of that episode. So we will give you guys the details regarding the date for that soon. So yeah, thank you guys so much again for joining us, and we hope that you enjoy. You have a great rest of your night.
Stay Gucci, people.